Alrighty, we are recording.
All right, it is 1 o'clock on Thursday, July 17th, 2025. This is a meeting of the Land Use Review Board. I am Janet Hurley, the chair, and I will ask board members to introduce themselves as I see them on my screen. Sarah.
Sarah Had, board member present.
Kirsten.
Kirsten Sultan, board member present.
Brooke.
Brooke Dingledine.
And Alex.
Alex Whitehagen, board member. Hello.
Okay, thank you. We are do we have any agenda updates from board members? I'll just point out that there's no possible action on draft Regional Planning Commission application guidelines today. We are still developing those and won't be ready for an action to adopt them this week. So no agenda updates other than that. We have no public present that I see, so we will, well, wait a minute, admit Renee. So I'll just ask if there is anyone wishing to comment on any non-agenda items. Okay, hearing none, seeing no hands raised, we will move on to our consent agenda items. Review and approve June 26th, June 30th, July 7th, and July 10th meeting minutes. We postponed this to give time for board members to formulate some modifications to each of those sets of minutes. And do I have a motion on approving those from any of you?
I will make a motion to approve all 4 sets of minutes if we would like to do them as a group, subject to any revisions as discussed today.
Okay.
Or we can do them individually, but I would do all 4.
Okay, thank you, Kirsten. Second by anybody?
Sure, I'll second.
Thank you, Alex. So I note that on the minutes from the 27th, that we need to indicate that Alex was an aye vote on that second to the last motion to enter into executive session. And I will note that under item E, where it says the board is following up, it's really Pete Gill that is following up. And were there any other modifications to the June 26th? Sorry, I think I said 27th. It says the 26th minutes.
Yes.
Okay, Kirsten.
I don't know the best way to do this, but I had emailed several paragraphs or requested revisions concerning the June 26th meetings minutes, draft minutes. Item H, some language to replace the sentence which indicates board members shared their thoughts on the draft, discussed the need for further legal training, considered the difference between rules, guidelines, and procedures. And I had sent some suggested revisions. I don't know what the best way to put those into the record. I could share screen, I could read it.
Yeah, I think if you could read them, and you could share a screen as well, but then if you could read them so that we can get that into the record.
I'll try to do this quickly. I think we had some preliminary feedback when we had taken up the draft minutes previously. So that my request is to strike that sentence I just read and replace it with the following. Draft revisions to the rules of procedure is conceptual, a very rough draft. There was board interest in discussing content and sections, what they cover, conceptual approach to the document, overall framework, also what content should be in rules versus policy versus guidelines. What are the difference? What belongs where? Set the stage as a board group project. Had previously discussed to not refer to Robert's rules and just say how to conduct our meetings. So remove the lingering reference, and had discussed that board removal was to be unanimous. These items not reflected in the current draft. Formatting and organization and word choices will be subject to change per future review. Need to address new hearing process for regional plan hearing review. Easier procedurally to revise the rule as opposed to starting anew per legal. There was interest in legal research and training to better understand rules, policy, procedure, guidelines in terms of general comprehensive framework and functions, and also go through the list of existing and needed board documents to holistically identify and organize what is needed, what belongs where, including quasi-judicial and other functions. Make sure all needed items are placed into the right quote unquote bucket, e.g. rules versus guideline. There was discussion that rules of procedure with respect to how meetings are generally run differs from rules governing plan review functions. There was interest in a holistic walkthrough of the draft document content, the origin, etc. Began discussion of the draft section governing board member removal. Not all board members were prepared to discuss. There will be future opportunity. Question: what is the time frame for missing 3 meetings? 2 board members suggest that documents should be written gender neutral. Additional basis of authority would need to be understood with respect to the scope of the current draft. Topic for legal research. Presumably complaint-driven, then investigation shouldn't be hidden behind 1 or 2 board members. All board members should collaborate, determine if actionable. Rebecca looked into the Green Mountain Care Board, which hasn't adopted theirs yet. Cannabis Control Board also doesn't have such a rule. Often removal sits with governor. Our board is unique. Statutory charge is removal and does not necessarily encompass disciplinary action, another topic for some further legal research. If board can remove a member, then should the board also have the ability to perform a lesser, quote unquote, lesser function, friends discipline? So that's what I had emailed around. I guess I won't bother sharing screen because I read it comprehensively and sorry it's taking time. But if the board is happy with those edits, that would be my request.
I am happy with those edits.
Any further edits on the 26th, June 26th minutes? Okay. Let's move on to the June 30th minutes. Suddenly they're not showing on my screen.
I have one minor request on
they're
this.
there. Go ahead. Kirsten.
Alex was ahead.
Oh, sorry, Alex.
So Kirsten, if you have one minor, do yours first. Mine are more extensive, as you might recall.
Okay, yes. So concerning the June 30th meeting, this is also happens to be item H. The paragraph, the second sentence, the draft states the board expressed concerns, etc. I would request that the wording be changed to, in lieu of the board, indicate some board members expressed concerns, etc. So replace the words the board with the words some board members. And I had emailed this around as well.
Anything else on the 30th?
Yeah, I had some substantive edits, Janet.
You want to read those?
No, I don't, but I will if that's the protocol you want to use. I
Well,
emailed
you
this
can-
around to the board twice and Maddie twice, so it seems a little superfluous to read them for all of your benefit when you've already seen them, but happy to do so if that's the process you want to use.
I don't know. I just feel like we should let people know that we're changing the record and not just do it behind the scenes. I guess though, if we're approving them, I think we should read them because
Okay,
give people a chance to comment rather than just board members.
yeah, Good enough. We can talk more about the
But-
process for this later.
Yeah.
Could we
So,
screen
sure.
share instead of reading?
Sure, as long as it's presented so that people can comment. So whichever you would like to do right now, Alex.
Gotcha. I will attempt to screen share.
Okay,
So hopefully you are looking at the crux of an email that I sent
yep,
two
We are.
times. And there were two items on the June 30th minutes that I wanted to just expand from the few sentences that were in the original draft. So item E was the first one related to operations, budget, and legislative updates. And so I proposed two paragraphs that you can see on the screen. One related to the preliminary financial figures for the fiscal year that had just ended, FY25. Then the second paragraph dealing with our discussion on financial matters related to unexpended funds from that fiscal year and the carry forward option that we had discussed.
thank you.
That's item E.
Yep,
Item H was related to our discussion on appeals, the appeals study summary and discussion. And again, I was proposing to expand what was just a few sentences in the draft minutes to a few paragraphs. The first paragraph summarizing that Brooke provided an overview of the process, highlighting the completion of the stakeholder meetings. And then the second paragraph talking about the discussion progressing to various models for handling appeals and various concerns that were raised about that. That's the second paragraph. I will skip what you see on your screen right now, which is an Alex Weinhagen shared a list of specific suggestions. These don't need to be added to the minutes, so I will skip over them. And then just a final concluding paragraph that talks about there being consensus on the need for additional data and analysis, and the board members agreeing to revisit the discussion at future meetings, as well as a specific comment or concern from Annette Smith, a member of the public who was at the meeting.
okay, I'm fine with keeping your list, Alex.
Yeah, well, I don't want us to break our minutes, and if we're not going to have that level of individual board member commentary recorded in them, I'm fine with that. And so, keep it clean, just the 3 paragraphs without that bullet list.
Okay, any further proposals for the June 30th minutes, proposals for revision? Brooke?
I did not unfortunately have the opportunity to compare the meeting minutes that we drafted through AI and sent to the stakeholders versus this version. It does seem similar, but I did want to ensure that we had consistency between the two of them. Nothing jumps out at me, but I think trying to stay with the same descriptions probably is helpful.
All right, but you're good with this proposed revision as
Yeah,
Alex presented?
Yeah, and I can certainly share the board, this version with the stakeholders. I do agree with Alex that if we were going to provide his individual points and detail, that we should do that for all the board members' positions or conversation. So I would be in favor of just the paragraphs unless you want to expand it for everybody's bullet point issues.
Nobody else gave bullet points. You mean going forward?
No, I'm just saying, for these minutes, I agree with Alex on the 3 paragraphs, not the bullet points for Alex. I just feel like to focus on one board member in our minutes versus all the board members is probably not the best.
And I'm totally okay with that, as I mentioned, just so we can move forward.
Sure.
So we have an echo.
Yeah, whoever joined by phone, if you could mute your phone, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
He disappeared. Okay. Kirsten,
I was just gonna say, my interpretation of Alex's proposed edits to those minutes is that he's identifying that that he's not wanting those individualized bulleted content included. And that's fine with me. And I also agree with the proposed edits, like,
okay.
no objection.
Okay, so any more on the 30th? Okay, so let's go to July 7th. Anybody have proposed revisions for July 7th minutes? Okay. I have one. This is sort of a general minutes thing. Whenever we have opportunity for public comments on non-agenda items, and then there are none, and it just says none, it makes it seem like we didn't provide an opportunity for public comments on non-agenda items. And so I was just wondering if we could, going forward, rephrase that somehow so that there were no comments, maybe, instead of none. Because
Yeah, that's fine.
okay, thanks.
Yep.
And I'm fine leaving it the way it is. I just wanted to point that out for future reference. Are there any July 7th revisions to be offered? Okay, let's go to July 10th. Any revisions for the July 10th minutes from board members?
I'll just make that same language change under the opportunity for public comment on non-agenda to just say no public comments received.
Okay. Okay, so no revisions to the 10th. Okay, so we have a motion to approve 4 sets of minutes with revisions as presented for June 26th and June 30th. Any further discussion by anyone? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain as I was absent for one of them.
Okay, that means we have a quorum that has, that motion passes, so all 4 sets are approved with Sarah abstaining. Okay, next on the agenda is operations and budget updates.
Hey, good afternoon. Just a couple of quick items here, but happy to go into other things as the board pleases. As you know, there's 2 open vacancies that we're working on filling for district coordinators. One is an exempt position and one is a classified position. We are hiring or it's being published for internal only applicants for the classified position, and there's an exempt position which is being publicized for all applicants external from the state and internal. So those are both ongoing, folks. Just as a PSA here for any public that might be watching, those will be on the HR website for folks to apply, and the deadline for those is July 30th. So hopefully we'll get some great applicants there. Certainly to the board members and others, spread those to your networks. Let them know about those positions. We're looking for a good batch of folks to review. No real update on district commission appointments, although we have done various contacts to folks on that and continue that outreach to get those vacancies within the district commissions filled. So that is ongoing. And then last, I was just going to mention, we've been continuing to do the chairs meeting where we have district commission chairs. There was one today. And we did mention at that meeting the recommendation, I think it's number 7, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Kirsten, on Rule 16D, which is the promotion of informal and non-adversarial resolutions. So we just pulled the chairs that were there and encouraged them to reach out if they have experiences utilizing that provision, thoughts on how we could better promote and utilize it going forward, particularly in terms of the recommendation that was outlined in the wood products manufacturing study. So just wanted to mention that. Otherwise, yeah, like I said, if there's other things that you all would like to hear about, I'm happy to go into more detail, but that's the quick summary for today.
Kirsten.
Yeah, I'll quickly mention related to the item that Pete just mentioned. I'll be doing some crowdsourcing with Pete and Aaron Brondike of the coordinators, similar to the conversation that's been initiated with the chairs concerning use of Rule 16D as it pertains to implementation of the wood products report action items. Just mention it.
Thanks. That's it, Pete, from you?
That's it from me. I don't think there's anything from Rachel, but can open that up if there is.
I don't have anything else to add. Thank you.
Okay. Moving right along to studies and reports. Let's start with Brooke.
All right, seem to be having a mouse problem today. On the appeals study, we had our 5th stakeholder meeting to focus on trying to build an Act 250 appeals board model for just the Act 250 cases. I just completed a summary of the notes to provide to our stakeholders and to the board so they can see the detailed list of the conversation and the issues that were raised. A lot of time was spent sort of debating the court versus the board model in and of itself. We tried to redirect the conversation, but we wanted to make sure everyone had an opportunity to speak, particularly because some folks were not present at the last meeting. So we did not curtail the conversation, but then we tried to refocus on the actual types of cases and what the standard of review would be. There was a lot of discussion about the hybrid approach and on the record plus, if there is a need for some kind of additional evidence to be submitted for good cause. So it was a very robust discussion. Much of it led into the appeals of municipal cases. So I tried to hold back that conversation because we're having our next stakeholder meeting on the 22nd is going to be a full board meeting, and so that everyone can be present and hear in real time the conversation. So in the meantime, there were some questions about like our overall jurisdiction and authority with the tier work, for example. So Aaron Brondike had created a really wonderful PowerPoint presentation about Act 181 and the LURB and its role, summarizing all of the tasks that 181 requires and gives a summary and explanation of how the jurisdiction then will be altered. So I'm going to provide that as well as the notes of our meeting back to the stakeholders, because that was one of the issues that was raised, I believe, by Samantha of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. So I'm following up to provide stakeholders with some information from really a great presentation that Aaron created. And so that'll be a better comprehensive understanding. It has the timeline as well for the various studies and tasks that we have. So I think that everything went well. All folks had time and an opportunity to speak. And we need to move our thought process into the larger part of the docket, which is the municipal appeals for next week.
Okay, thanks, Brooke. Any questions for Brooke from anyone?
Brooke, is the, and maybe this is a Maddie question, is the agenda for next week's meeting posted yet with the team's connection info? So if I want to alert some municipal officials to it, can I give them the contact, the connection info, or is that yet to come?
Yeah, it's posted. I have it up there. I'm queuing up your board documents email that has the link to it in it, but you can find it on our agenda page.
Thanks, Maddie.
Thanks, Maddie.
Alex, let's move on to you.
You're welcome.
Right. So last week, the first draft, very rough draft of the Tier 3 rules was shared with the Tier 3 working group and Rebecca, our staff attorney. And the working group met 2 days ago on July 15th to discuss it. And we didn't have enough time. So it was a 2-hour meeting that should have been at least a 3-hour meeting. That was my bad. And so we were able to review the resource areas that were selected to be in the Tier 3 designation, at least in this first round. But we really didn't have enough time to review some of the nuts and bolts of the rules, including exemptions and so on and so forth. So the plan was to get you that draft rule today so that you would have time, at least tomorrow, to review it in advance of our discussion of it on Monday, on the 21st. I still want to do that. I'm still going to do that. After this meeting, check your email. You'll see a message with attachments to peruse. But the upshot is that it's taking longer than anticipated. You've heard this before, so sorry, it's a little bit of a broken record. And on Monday, I want to talk both about the substance and a little bit about shifting the timeline and the process going forward. And Janet and I spoke briefly about talking to the legislature about an extension on our delivery date for the proposed rules to the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, LCAR. But I'd actually like you to see the materials first and get my memo and then talk about that on Monday instead of today. I'm just giving you a heads up and whoever's listening to us that we're still making progress, but it's slower than anticipated. And I think it will change our timeline for delivering the proposed rules, which right now in statute is February 1st. So that's the update. I apologized to the stakeholders for not planning enough time at that meeting and told them that, we would continue our discussions. And it's my hope that we will do that and shift our public engagement to be a little bit later so that we have something that folks at least understand and hopefully are comfortable with, but at least understand before we go out to the general public and try to help them understand and get their feedback.
Thanks, Alex. And what about 8C? Any movement there yet?
Lots of appreciative folks accepting the invitation to be considered. And so, I need to pull that group together, the list of that group together and get it to all of you for one of next week's meetings. And I should have thought of that when we talked about our agenda setting just yesterday. But it looks good. Most of the Tier 3 stakeholders that I've approached are interested in serving on the Criterion 8C working group. And I've got interest from one of our district coordinators. Pete and I worked to reach out to the district coordinators. So we've got one who would like to serve, and heard back from a couple of regional planning commission staff and a couple of municipal officials. So I think we're in good shape. I just need to get the list together for you. Sorry about the delay on that as well.
That's okay. And, you know, it's okay that it's not on the agenda per se. I think it can just go under updates.
Good
So,
point.
yeah. Brooke.
Yeah, I just want to say that in talking, we have a lot of shared stakeholders, and some of the folks that I spoke with this week have mentioned that they really appreciate that Alex is taking his time and is they're very concerned about being rushed through this process. And so if we need to ask for extensions or have to retool or schedule, the quality of this work is so vitally important that I just want to make sure that their voices are heard. They appreciate additional time to get through this process. And I think it's really important that we don't rush it just to get something in on a certain date. If we need the quality, the time to produce the quality, then I'm sure the legislature would understand.
Thanks, Brooke.
And for tier 3 in particular, it's not going into effect for many months after February. So it's not a critical, February 1 is not a critical deadline.
Yes, and so December 31st of 2026 is when tier 3 becomes effective. So there's always been quite a bit of a gap between our statutory delivery deadline of February 1st and when the rules actually need to be tidied up. So we have slack there for sure. Brooke, quick question for you. I had talked to the tier 3 stakeholders about tentatively meeting again on August 8th. And now that the meeting a couple days ago ran short, I really want that meeting if I can get folks to attend. But I don't want to step on your series of meetings that you've planned, and I just don't remember if August 8th is one of them. Is it?
No, actually, we are double booked the last week of July and the 29th and 30th. The 30th, we haven't specified the topic yet, but then I think the appeals stakeholders deserve a week of vacation from me and the study. So yeah, feel free. We'll reconvene if we need to, maybe second or third week of August.
Great, thanks.
Sarah, do you have some updates?
Just, I think that we're targeting not next week, but the following week to come back to the board with some tier 1A updates.
Okay, thanks. And we heard from Kirsten. Oh, there's me. So we are going to be discussing regional plan application procedures in the upcoming meetings, so I don't really have anything to report there. And there's no new, nothing new to report on the EJ law obligations front either. As you recall, I'm participating in a committee that's reviewing our proposals to hire a consultant to do environmental justice, to produce an environmental justice mapping tool for the state. So that's all I have. Kirsten.
Yeah, I'll just add that concerning the wood products implementation, I have a great meeting with staff, with Pete Gill and Aaron Brondike, and we went down through the list of items. Aaron is going to take a stab at drafting the fact sheet and supplemental guidance, which is item 1, and we'll be working on that together. And also with ANR, as laid out in the action items. And then I just wanted to quickly share on the tier 2 work, I've started to gather some information that is relevant and background information to the topics of 9B and accessory on farm. So also had a sort of preliminary conversation with staff and getting oriented with that work as well.
Thanks. And remind me, you and Sarah were gonna be coming back to us on 1 and 10
1
acre.
Yep,
Is that next
and
week?
also, we don't have it on the agenda yet.
Oh, okay, so, but you will be soon.
Soon.
Okay, okay,
Mhm.
okay. Anything else on, process updates for our various Act 181 tasks? No? Any questions from anyone? Okay, let's move on to item G, which is discussion. It says impossible action, and I indicated that there is no possible action, but I just produced a PDF of the draft and shared that with the board for discussion on Monday. It incorporates many of the comments that we've received. However, Sarah and Rebecca and I are still reviewing some of the comments, and in particular, we'll probably be reworking how we receive the future land use map information based on DHCD comments. And basically, the idea is to piggyback on how DHCD will be receiving that information and reviewing it in a GIS environment. And that would allow us to do the same and review those proposed boundaries with in a viewer that allows us to compare the boundaries with various other geographic information that is relevant to approving those boundaries. So that will be posted on our website for the meeting materials on Monday. And I'm hoping that we can start talking about those guidelines on Monday as a board, or continue talking about them as a board on Monday. So perhaps not spending too much time today unless somebody from the board has substantive comments to put forth right now. Okay. And anyone in attendance who wishes to comment on that? Any public comments on our draft guidelines? Okay, so let's move on to item H, discussion on draft communications plan. So this is a draft that was posted on the website for today's meeting. And this is this you, Sarah? That just put
Yes.
this? Okay. And so this, what you're showing is a redlined version of what was posted on the website, I see.
Right,
And
so I'll, go ahead.
Can I, well, I don't know, maybe I should just let you go, but I wonder if this is a plan or if it is guidelines. And so maybe this is just another one of those indications that we need to have our discussion about which bucket things go into. But to me, this seems like guidelines rather than a plan. And then here, this is a minor sort of formatting issue, but in the guidelines that we've been working on previously, instead of using the LURB acronym, we've been using board and defining that for the entire document to mean the Land Use Review Board. So I think probably we want to be consistent. And do board members have a preference as to whether to be known as the board in these documents or the LURB?
I have no preference.
Brooke?
I would prefer board, but when we say the board, it should be capitalized as opposed to a board. And that's consistent with statute. I mean, obviously, land use review board is used at times, but board is typically used and LURB is never used that I've seen.
Maddie, is that you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd also just flag it's consistent with our branding on the website as well. So just throwing that out there.
Okay. So, Sarah, if you want to give an overview of what we're looking at and what you're looking for from us. Oh, sorry, Kirsten.
Oh, that's okay. I was just gonna mention, I don't have a strong preference either way. I feel like it's kind of six of one, half dozen the other, but I'm fine with using board. And if memory serves, that's what was landed on for wood products. After
Okay.
mention that it's consistent with the website, but
Yeah. Okay.
not stuck on anything.
Okay. Okay, Sarah, take it away.
All right. So this has been something that's been in the background for a bit of time. So you're right, we have made decisions that are not reflected here. I wanted to share the red line version because after the last time the board saw this, I also brought this to the all staff meeting and got input there. So I combined that as well as the board's input. And I wanted to keep on making some progress on this in the background because I think it's important as we look to stand up some of our processes and share information out with the public to have a more strategic plan for it. Most organizations have a communications plan, not guidance. This may need to be changed and modified to the board specific, because you're right, I don't think, although we're a planning entity, it doesn't seem like we have plans. So we can call it something else, but I just want to take the time that I have here to just go through this, sort of hit a refresh and hopefully move the ball forward on this. So the first sort of changes that were made was to, under the why are we doing this, was promote engagement and strategies to involve the public. There was a lot of feeling of not tying ourselves, although the International Association for Public Participation is sort of a gold standard. There's the idea of why don't we just be clear and put in this the metrics that we're looking for as opposed to referencing somebody else's metrics. So throughout this, you'll see that we deleted the IAPP and instead we use more descriptive terms to be a bit more direct in terms of what we were meaning. The next part is key audiences, and this differentiates between internal and external because you might want to say things in different ways to different audiences. We included applicants and permittees and just included the IE list and just referenced everybody in terms of being within that permittee category. And instead of saying industry, we went with stakeholders.
Can I ask what the difference between stakeholders and all of those other groups are?
Well, stakeholders might be, for instance, we have our different stakeholder groups right now that we're working with. We might have those in the future.
As defined in statute.
And so it might be worthwhile to retain that.
Okay.
Internal communications. So again, we're a little bit clearer, and you can see here we did make some of the changes going to board and leadership team, and that we're making sure that we align on communication priorities and add a little bit more clarity about the board coordinating the chair coordinating communication of the board and keeping the board apprised of pertinent information. And
So,
we defined
to
the
me,
leadership.
Sarah, I'm not sure what that means. And so maybe I can talk with you offline a little bit about that and try to get more clarity about exactly what that is. What that's
Sure.
giving.
So just what I'd love to do, because some of these will help explain if I can get through some of them,
Okay.
is get through, I'll go through sections and I'll take questions. I see a
Okay.
cursor. Unless, Brooke, you have anything right now that you'd like me to stop or go back to?
No, go ahead. I do it on this section, but go ahead.
Okay.
That's fine. Thanks.
All right. So with internal communications, we're trying to define rules of how we get message out internally. And the last time that we talked about this as a board, we said, well, we have a leadership team, and within that leadership team, then we have reports coming from those three sort of branches that we have. And so what we tried to do was give a little bit more specificity in saying that, and this is more for like messaging, like let's say we decide that we're with some of the tier 3 rules, asking for more input within our internal staff, that the chair can then coordinate with that leadership team to get the message out to their direct reports. And so here we're defining the chair and leadership team. I'm happy to put a finer point on some of these things, but we're trying to just define people's roles within the organization and that sort of hierarchy here. And it was interesting. We are going to be respectful, but we just didn't want to put in the term, just sort of taking it verbatim that everybody is going to be respectful. We added in under methods, phone, and also under employee and commissioner engagement, reflecting that our internal, our appointed positions are also part of our internal, and we want to engage with them. And I think we took out some of the shoulds here and put wills as being more direct and aspirational. And also that we will promote team building activities, internal communication, and build and sustain connectedness and morale. External communication guidelines, I'll wait, I'll pause, and I can go back up and I'll take any questions on internal.
So, so the way you described this verbally just now made more sense, was clearer to me in terms of the leadership team conveying information up and down. And the chair perhaps being a conduit. So I wonder if the chair coordinates communication between the leadership team and the board or something like that. And that the leadership team, yeah, maybe. What do others think? Brooke?
Yeah, I don't understand what this section means. Why is there a need for a key liaison between the board and leadership if given our organizational chart? Do I have to go through Janet to be able to talk with Pete? And even the notion of coordinating communication between the board and the leadership team, I don't understand how that works and why we would require that.
Well, I think examples are important. And so let's say we have tier 1 applications that we're now have and we don't, but let's say we are to the point that we have an application to go out and we're going to go live with it. And we want to do some educational outreach around it and first have our internal folks sort of tell us what they think about it. That outside of our meetings, the chair can work with the leadership team to say, how can we get this message out to our staff, our commissioners, and be a sort of a conduit back and forth in terms of comments coming back and forth. Just generally, there might be some more specific where we decide to appoint people, but on messaging that we have these ready-made conduits to have larger pieces of information go in and out, not day to day necessarily, but just in terms of these larger messaging pieces.
I mean, I get, there are certainly things that the chair is dealing with. I just don't like the notion of having some rule that says I can't talk directly with leadership. I don't think that's how our
I don't think-
organization is supposed to
No.
be structured.
I don't think
Absolutely not.
that's
And I
what
get-
this
Well, I get
says,
what you're
Brooke.
saying that you're trying to accomplish. I don't think this language does.
So
Brooke, I
that's
don't
why,
think that this language says what you just said. It doesn't say board members cannot talk to the leadership team. It says that the chair shall act as a key conduit, so to speak. But the part of this sentence that I don't understand, Sarah, at this point is apprised of pertinent information. That seems too vague to be meaningful to me.
I think that says, I think what shortening that sentence makes it more effective. And the thing that I will note is the other piece that needs to be worked on, which we as a board are going to have a training on and then come back to, are the procedural rules. And that is that sort of larger framework that we need to work within. This is specifically in terms of standing up communications and messaging. So this is really meant to be more around education, outreach, and awareness and engagement, and not necessarily just day to day. We do have some, for instance, when we're describing the executive director, we're saying that they manage the day-to-day internal communications because that's what pertains to communications here. But this is meant to be aspirational more so as a plan. We'll figure out which bucket it goes into if it needs to be specific guidance, but it's really meant to be more sort of aspirational in terms of here's how we're going to try and disseminate information, if that makes sense. Brooke.
Yeah, there's another issue in terms of the beginning of the sentence, and that is serves as the key liaison between the board and leadership team, ensuring alignment on communication priorities. What are you referring to, and what are our communication priorities? And then the other question that I have is if the chair is if the chair is the liaison between the board and leadership, but in 3 you have that the leadership team serves as the liaison between the board and staff, that seems inconsistent. So they're the liaison between the board, between the staff and the board, or the board chair and then to the board. You know what I mean? I think it comes down to that goes back to the issue of, operational control is in the board, to my understanding, or the way it's supposed to work. Is
And
that
I
we
think-
come together. So I don't have any problems with logistical, keep us surprised of important stuff, but I'm not understanding the logistics of what you're saying versus how we have to actually operate is my confusion.
I think alignment on communication priorities, those are board defined. And maybe that's what's missing here is board instead of board chair, executive director. Maybe it just, because board members and commissioners are responsible for being informed. Maybe the board is also responsible for setting those priorities and policies, communications policies. So maybe that's a missing piece here.
So I think the thing is we will need to create communication priorities. We do not have them right now. This is providing the framework as to how we can do that. And I do think that there needs to be some sort of effective chain of command for this in terms of communicating things out versus having, I think having a point person, if we determine communication priorities that we need to get out, we need to have a point person on that. I don't think that we're effective as 5 people trying to communicate to 3 people.
Right.
So
Sarah, but what I mean is, I think another paragraph that says board, and that the board is, responsible for setting communications priorities and policies. That's all. So, and that would be the first item before the board chair. Alex.
I like your suggestion, Janet. I also kind of feel like Brooke that, it feels like it's the board that, would be, would be communicating, or a designee of the board, which sometimes will be the chair and sometimes will be a different board member. And I'm thinking of our current, we're, each of us is leading on a different aspect of Act 181. And it feels like we've delegated the communication on those projects to that board member, right? Brooke is communicating with the leadership team and staff on appeals. I am on tier 3. And so I imagine maybe when Act 181 is done, it'll shift. But it feels like we have 5 full-time board members. So each of us is going to be delegated assignments, and it won't always be the chair's responsibility to be in charge of communication on all fronts coming out of the board. So that's why I like your suggestion, Janet. And I wonder if there's a way to just weave that in that, the chair and or other board member designee, will do X and Y and Z.
Yeah, and it's more related to a particular task or communication item or topic. But
yeah, all sort of with
instance,
consent of the board, right?
Right.
As opposed to one person being a rogue element on the board trying to do something, whether that's the chair or me or whoever.
Right. But also remember, we've delegated you with the task of communicating with media. And that's something that we did early on. And so that's so not just a key person in terms of various tasks that the board is undergoing, but also in responding to media.
Right, although I'll note that this section that we're on right now is internal communications, but yes, I take your point on external communications.
That's right. Okay, so
that's where I'm focused. I'm like, we're just talking, this section is just about how different members of our team communicate with each other. And I sort of feel similarly to Brooke and yourself, Janet, that we should expand this to be a little more board focused than board chair. But I respect your point, Sarah, and I'm not sure exactly what it is we want the chair to have, designated dominion over on the internal communication front. Not sure.
Me neither, but I think the first paragraph should just be the board in general. And then, whatever we decide the chair should take on can be the second paragraph and onward. So.
Yeah, and I would note that number 4, Roman numeral 4 under A lists board members and commissioners. So that's sort of where the board members are dealt with as opposed to the board chair. And I think it might make sense to extract board members from that line and just focus on commissioners and add this new line for board members that we've been talking about. I do like what it says in terms of the commissioners, and that they have a responsibility to keep the chair of the board and the executive director informed. And I do think that's an appropriate role for the chair, actually, is to be the conduit along with the executive director for commissioners, who are volunteers and are a really important part of our organization, but sometimes are easy to, not have a communication pathway with.
Right.
Kirsten, I was just going to ask, you haven't spoken yet, so.
Yeah, well, I agree with what Brooke and Alex are saying, and I like Janet's idea of putting a first bullet with the board. And I sort of generally understand that our responsibilities pertain to, the authority and actions of the board as a whole, or through a designee, which often would be the chair, but sometimes is another person. I wonder if here there's any usefulness in mentioning with respect to the chair, the elements that the board chair does expressly have responsibility for in terms of HR. So, you know,
So
I
this
don't know
is-
if that would, I mean, this, I know this is
So that would-
communication, but
Be in our procedural rules, that we would want to tackle that. I think this is meant to be agnostic in terms of buckets, legal, HR, etc. And I don't think we want to get too prescriptive here with that, because there's such a range of other things. And I think we also want to think that through with our procedural rules and have that conversation as a board. So
Yeah.
I'd rather,
well,
yeah,
understand. I think in current paragraph 1, the second sentence, the chair coordinates communication between the board and leadership team. Like, I don't think we need to have that sentence in here. I think it's not necess, it's not always going to pertain. And so I think it can create some confusion.
well, I like the idea and I'd like to take this and work on a new A1 and move this to A2 and specifically speak to the board as setting the communication priorities and at times having designees for communication. And then I think we can shorten this up about the board chair and basically say when there isn't a specific designee, that the chair will serve as liaison. Just because there might be something that might come up that we might not anticipate. And for a direct way for that to come back to the board should be enumerated somewhere. So let me do a little bit of work on new rule. Just for the sake of time, I'd like to keep moving and get to external communication, which I already delved into. But Brooke, do you have any last thoughts on internal communication?
Yeah, just if you could skip down to C3, Roman numeral 3. The follow-up procedures, why wouldn't the board be doing that with the executive director? I mean, not that I want more work, but wouldn't that be something we would all talk about? I don't know.
And I think we can put something up here about roles and responsibilities that what we're missing right now is that piece on the board. And having clear roles and responsibilities is always a good thing, in terms of making sure that things get done. Let me think that through a little bit more. I understand what you're saying, but I like C3 because it's very specific about who will get things done. But I think we can, in A1, prescribe a bit more about the board's role in this.
I mean, my thought is I don't understand why you would single out the chair to establish procedures for the board to follow. I think that should be a group project. That's all. Thanks.
And I'd be happy to delegate it to Pete. He works for us. We can tell him what to do.
All right.
He's
External.
smiling, see?
I apologize. When I share screen, I can't see who's
Happy to
smiling
do it.
versus who's, yes. So we started diving a little bit into external. And I think what we tried to do was here again, instead of the IAPP, be more specific with, we want to inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and hopefully empower the public. And here we have some strategies about how we're going to do that. I think some of the feedback that I received from staff as well as from the board is just given our statutory role, it's very hard to do the empowerment piece. We are in some ways an empowerment because we are appointed, the legislature, which is elected, has a role in that, as does the governor. And so what we did was we changed the empower piece to the public is involved in the decision-making process. And we recognize further on that this is to the extent possible. But what we're trying to do with external communication guidelines is really speak to how we're going to get messages out externally, what people's expectations for engaging with us can be, and in terms of public involvement, what we're going to attempt to do. Recognizing that each case is different and we might not be able to check off each category when we do that. I'm happy to go through the specifics of A, but this again goes to recognizing that we already have some parameters. We do have some MOUs that was pointed out that we have executed. Some of those may have lapsed, some of those may be yet to come, but where we do, that those are things that we should be referencing and incorporating. That again, this outreach can be targeted. And so we might not check all the buckets, but we're going to try and make sure that we use the best decisions in the moment, and that we're going to have clear mechanisms for participation wherever possible. Under strategies of participation, we have how we utilize the different things that we have right now, how we utilize the different tools. So for instance, our website provides some information that's sort of passive form that people can go to. We become more engaged when we actually do public hearings and warnings and legal ads. That spectrum becomes even greater when we do advisory and stakeholder committees, then co-led committees or coalition, and then regional community or stakeholder forums. And here we're saying, what I'd said before was tackled a little bit later on, of we might not be able to fully reach that empowerment level with everything, but we'll do our best and be transparent that that's something that we're trying to strive for. Methods and tools, how we utilize all these different things. I tried to harness what we have and how we're using things. Also wanting to recognize the different constraints that we have with public meetings and hearings per state statute and open meeting law. Our YouTube account, we don't have social media. We don't allow comments on YouTube, and also recognizing our written decisions and correspondence are a form of communications, but they're not covered by this communications policy. And also for records request, we have an over 20-page document that handles specifically how we do records and information management, that will point people to for those specific instances. I'd like to stop at the end. Yes, you can see the sort of teaser is there's more specific external communication under legislative testimony inquiries, but why I stop here under the sort of general external communications and see what questions we have.
I think that as we develop a community engagement plan, that it will kind of take, I see that as what this is to some degree. And that's a requirement that we have under statute now to develop a community engagement plan, and these strategies and these ideas will be considered as part of that. I don't know if it would replace this, but it's something that will be much more fleshed out than this section 4. Brooke.
Well, before you, let me answer if I can, you, Janet, before I take Brooke, but I think what this is designed to do is be a patch until we get to that point, recognizing that our time frame for developing that community engagement plan is a couple years out. And I think if we are talking about how we are going to externally communicate, that we should be addressing how we're going to engage with the public, at least in a minimal way. This is, I think, going to be a living document that we can go back in and modify as we evolve. But for right now, just having a baseline that we can bounce off of. Brooke.
Yeah.
Yeah, up in the beginning where we say plain language and a neutral tone should be used to promote understanding. This came up when we were in the wood products stakeholder meetings, and the notion that trying to reduce it to plain language when it's a highly complex legal, explanation or whatever, is really not doable to the extent that one would hope. So if we put a little bit of wiggle language in there, like plain language to the extent possible, to be used to promote understanding, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Since
where feasible.
I'm not sure we can attain.
Yeah, I think partially that was a report to the legislature on a specific technical topic. And if we're talking about external communications to the public, that, our responsibilities or obligations under not just the environmental justice law, but accessibility guidelines that the state puts forth.
Right, but like our
Uh-uh.
guidance documents are communications to the external public. So I'm just trying, I think, just saying whenever possible or to the extent feasible or something like that, because you can't reduce those to a 6th grade level. That was my only concern.
Understood.
Anyway,
Okay, I think I got it.
sure.
Well, I'm just saying that there are different audiences. The legislature is a different audience than the general public.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about like the report itself. What I'm talking about are the other instances where we create documents like the ones we have to do for the wood products manufacturing folks, fact sheets and that kind of thing, where we will do our best, but it will still be a pretty technical document. Using terminology that is, terms of art, but that's what something's called, that kind of thing. That's all I'm concerned
Okay.
about.
Duly
Anyway.
noted.
I would
Yeah.
use the term that Brooke did rather than whenever feasible. She said as
To the
you
extent
said
possible, or
to the extent feasible is what you said. Yeah. Alex.
I had a couple
Okay,
other things, actually.
Oh,
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead,
go
Brooke,
ahead.
if you want.
Yeah, let me try to move through them really quick. Memorandums, I think it's memoranda as the plural, but what MOUs are we talking about? I have no clue. So maybe describing what we're talking about, or at least us understanding what we're putting in this guidance so that we have some notion of what we're talking about.
So it was meant to be general. I think we can define that elsewhere, but I think we do have MOUs, for instance, with like A&R. No, okay.
And I think I'm not sure that this belongs here. Memorandums of understanding aren't really communication documents. They're agreements between entities.
Yeah, like on enforcement between us and A&R, I think maybe we have an MOU for, like how to collaboratively move forward.
Okay, we
on
could take this out.
enforcement, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, unless you have an idea of a different kind of memorandum of understanding, I think that they're more, there's something other than communication documents. Allison, were you just about going to comment on that?
I was just confirming we do have an enforcement MOU with A&R. I guess it does have, I could try to pull it up, but it does have communications related items about how we communicate with them, but I don't know that necessarily means needs to be included here, but just confirming, I guess, some of the observations about potential memoranda that we have.
And then I got 2 other really quick things. The chart, the note about it is recognized that few LURB activities may fall under the empowerment section. That should not be in the strategies for participation. I think it should be like preceding the chart or in the empowerment section to say, under limited circumstance, something in that top right box under empower or before it that
Rather
makes
than
it,
in the chart, yeah.
Yeah, it makes it clear that these are limited or certain circumstances. So that it doesn't look like the public is making all our decisions or has that power.
Alex?
So I want to go back to the plain language neutral tone. I actually don't think that.
I'm sorry, can I just, before you go on, that's not where I was talking about putting it. You're still down in that bottom strategies of participation section. Sarah? Maybe just put it in that top box.
You mean put it as a bulleted item there?
Like either in the empower box where it's like the public's involved in the decision making
there.
process.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then put it after that as text that says, doesn't happen a lot or whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Alex. Just wanted to catch that before we moved on.
Okay. Right. So back to the plain language, neutral tone. I actually don't think that language addresses the issue that I want, which is accessibility, as much as we think it does. Plain language is just that. Neutral tone is, there's not a lot of exclamation points and you're not using a lot of adjectives and adverbs. So I think what I would like to get at is that our communications should be accessible as possible to the average Vermonter. And plain language and neutral tone is just part of how you do that. I actually would like to avoid external communications that are, and guidelines, not guidelines, but guidelines are an example of external communications that are excessively long or technical. And I understand what you were saying, Brooke, and I respect that, but I actually think that if a guideline is designed not for a commissioner or a district coordinator, but is instead designed for an applicant or a neighbor to a project, it should not be technical and it should not be long. It should be as brief as possible and it should be in sixth grade language that everybody can understand, because it's a different audience. And if we have to use technical terms, then at the very least we have to define them. But in the best case scenario, you just don't. So that's me whining a little bit. But I think my substantive suggestion is that maybe, Sarah, you could think about rewording, and I'm not going to give you the actual words, but to go a little bit beyond plain language and neutral tone. That's all.
I think it goes back to the audience. The legislature is a different audience than the RPC, that is different than the neighbor or the applicant. You know what I mean? So,
maybe that's what needs to be in there is appropriate to the audience and the intended audience.
Yeah.
Because you're right, Janet. There could be some RPC external communications that actually could be much more technical than what I just described. But
will need
to an
to
average
be
person, it needs to be a lot less than that, and it just can't be 20 pages long. You just can't expect an average applicant to read a 20-page document to understand something about one sub-criteria of an Act 250 guideline. It's too much.
Right. So I think duly noted, and just for the sake of time, thank you. I'll look into that. But I think what you hit on, Alex, is that empowerment piece, is that when we do have to be technical, that we give people the tools to be able to understand it. That we are playing spoken wherever possible. We are looking at accessibility, but where we can't be, that we should be empowering people by giving some tools to be able to explain or achieve some level of understanding. So anything else, Alex, or I'm just going to keep on moving if that's all right.
Oh, that's fine. You can keep going.
Okay.
Kirsten.
Yeah, I'd just like to quickly echo, the part of what Brooke said insofar as, yes, sometimes these are complicated topics and we can't and I agree with Janet. I mean, it can be a function of the audience, but at the same time, we always have to ensure that we're not oversimplifying topics in a way that creates misinformation for the public. And so we just always need to be aware of that because I have seen that happen. I've seen the sort of like the one-page brochure defining when you do and don't need a permit. You can't fit it on a one-page brochure. So, you just, it has to be approached very carefully. So I like the kind of when feasible and yeah, look forward to seeing a more expanded, with Alex's comment. I agree with what he's saying too. So.
All right.
Just the other, I wanted to skip back quickly if we could to the internal communications. I wonder, I don't know if this is getting too prescriptive, but in terms of the internal work on continuous improvement that we're anticipating engaging in, I wonder if we want to mention that here because that could be internal and external just as a important area of our work.
So I think
so I
that's
just kind of
important, but
mention
I
it.
think that's perhaps procedural rules more so than communication.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
I don't
part
think
of
it's
this, just
communication.
to speak to the sort of elephant in the room, is usually what happens with an organization is you have developed a strategic plan and then you have a communications plan. We're sort of building the plane and flying it, and at some point, hopefully, we'll get to a strategic plan. But right now, we're sort of back and building, and we're creating a communications plan to hopefully get to that in the future. So I think that's a really good observation, Kirsten. And maybe that gets into our communication priorities, and once we set them. And again, I think the idea of having this be a living document that we can come back in and address will be a very good thing, but at least to have something, a stopgap right now, in terms of how we get out press releases and what have you. So I have 8 minutes left. I would really love to get to legislative and get through the document, but so if somebody has something different than what we've already covered, I'm happy to do it. I see Alex and Brooke have their hands up, but do you have Alex?
No? Are you shaking your
Apologies.
head?
Inadvertent hand.
Okay.
Okay.
Brooke?
Real quick, right where you're at, approval, stop, go back, approval and review protocols under C. All official external communications must be reviewed and approved by the board chair or executive director. I don't think that's what we want to say. Somebody wants to, what's official correspondence or, all my emails need to be approved before I respond to
Yeah.
stakeholders?
No.
I think we need to change it.
No, so this is going to the external, and this is like official communication, press releases and media statements, for instance.
And
So
so I think maybe the appropriate designee, because again, right now, Alex is the one who takes on the media. And yeah, and I'm certain that Sarah doesn't mean all external communications. So there may need to be some sort of definition, Sarah, of what you mean by official external communications, or maybe they're general program communications. I don't know.
Pete,
What do you think? Pete?
Yeah, sorry, just unmuting here. No, it's just going to say, in terms of designation, you all did designate Alex to work with me on media responses. So we're kind of doing that somewhat in a collaborative way. I mean, if there's minor, strictly informational pieces, I generally will tend to loop Alex in just to let him know as an FYI about those. If it's something that's more substantive, then we'll have a discussion, and oftentimes it'll be Alex then who will do the official response. But I'm happy to do it however the board's pleasure is.
right, and to address Brooke's concern, regular correspondence emails are not subject to this policy. This is really designed to be more around those media requests or larger messages that we get out. So I think adding in a designee, hopefully will,
I think
Um,
also a definition,
Yeah,
for
Sarah,
what,
for official external communication,
so we,
or saying general program communications or something like that.
so here is under methods and tools.
Reference B, Roman numeral 5 in C. And maybe that'll help.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
What was that, Alex?
Reference B, Roman numeral 5 in section C that we were just talking about, because that's the section you're mentioning that says, you know, regular correspondence and decisions aren't subject to this policy. That might just help a little bit. I would think it would be awkward for, like, say, a district coordinator to read this policy someday in the future and key in on number C and say, wait a minute, I'm going to communicate with an applicant and I have to go get approval from the executive director before I can do that. Like that's not our intent. And I think that's what B Roman numeral 5 is talking about.
so it's sort of the inverse though, Sarah, so this doesn't work, not as noted.
Well, no,
It's,
so the official communication is everything under B. And then if you look, we say under 5, we're exempting this.
okay, I see.
and you know, either if you're using some new term of art, I think it needs to be defined. If you want to just refer to the items in some section, fine,
Yeah,
but
maybe.
I don't like doing that in policies because if they change, if you alter it, you have to go searching for section numbers to find. So more general language like as defined in this rule or whatever we're calling it. You know, that kind of thing.
I still think it's not clear, but I'm
Yeah.
willing to let Sarah take that feedback and figure it out.
Great, thank you.
All right. I am going to try and get through the rest of this. Legislative testimony inquiries. We reviewed this last time. It reflects our existing policy. There were no changes to it, so I'd like to, unless anybody has something specific on it. I think I want to spend, we don't have much left for time, but this is an area that we had a lot of discussion on. That I want to make sure under handling complaints that we get to. I'll just say, I'm going to scroll through the rest. I can come back up to complaints, but the monitoring and evaluation, this is again saying that this is going to be a living document, and to speak to sort of what Kirsten was saying is this is part of the continuous improvement is we do want to make sure that we are continuing to monitor and improve this document and try and get to that on a regular basis. So I'm going to go back up here to the handling complaints. And here were some of the changes after the all staff meeting and speaking with staff and trying to refine this a little bit more. Were some of the changes that were made is recognizing that there's specific process that govern the permitting process that's contained within our rules, guidance, and procedures that must be followed and supersede this plan. This is really meant to address, I think, what we've been seeing as sort of tackling some of the image problem, the misperceptions, and how we can point people in the right direction to have some of their concerns addressed. So this is meant to be your first go at this, but yes, Janet?
I'm wondering, Allison, maybe you can answer this. All complaints should be established to be either an enforcement, environmental justice, or general concern. Are the Title IV complaints a different category from environmental justice complaints? I think they are.
Title VI complaints. Yeah, there's two separate.
6, sorry.
There's
Yeah.
two
Sorry, I was
two
on mute.
two separate ones. We'll let Allison chime in here if she's there.
Yeah, I guess this is meant to be, well, that sounds like Pete knows well, but is that distinction between the state environmental justice requirements? Yeah, I think it should be separate. I think, yeah,
Okay.
that looks good.
Yeah.
State and federal.
Brooke?
Yeah, the new language about the specific processes, is that anything that we want to like define? Instead of, there's some other stuff that this doesn't apply to. It's like we haven't really defined what this doesn't apply to.
You mean and provide links, sort of like what we do with the enforcement and environmental justice in Title IV? We can provide links to those procedures
Well, I
or
mean,
rules.
you know, if somebody calls up and says, hey, where's my permit? It's not, you know, it's taking too long. So what is that? Is that something that then the district coordinator gets notified and there's a process? It's, you know, in the permitting process. So are you saying like that would not be covered by this policy? That would go into a different silo into our staff who's handling permitting, sent to Pete, whatever. So I'm just
So-
trying to get a handle on what is
Yep.
it that we're talking about that it's not applying to, and what are, I don't know that you need a link, but I think you gotta say something. to
Okay,
identify that.
Alex?
I agree with Brooke on that point. And my comment was going to be under the receipt and acknowledgement. And boy, if I already said this at our last time, I apologize. I don't remember. It says all complaints received should be acknowledged within 24 hours whenever feasible. Maybe Pete could speak to whether that is what our staff are currently operating with. But for me personally, in my past experience, dealing with the public and a lot of, you know, not just complaints, but inquiries. I'd love to bump that to 48 hours and keep the whenever feasible, but I just
Or-
feel like one day is not enough time for somebody to receive it and think about it and then respond and say, yeah, I got it. Because oftentimes it requires a little more than just message received. Maybe it doesn't always. Anyways,
Right.
that would be my suggestion. 48
But
hours,
I
please.
would also say instead of hours to say business days.
2
I
business
like that.
days.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give that suggestion too. That's a great idea. Yes, right now our standards for our district coordinator staffs is within 24 hours. I think that's business days, but it's a good question actually, now that we're thinking about that. I certainly have heard that can be difficult for folks. I think you're right. There's two different approaches. One, you can substantively respond within that certain given point in time, or you can just say acknowledged, received, and then follow up after that. But there should be a time limit to that then too, right? So yeah, it depends on how much detail you want to put into this.
I just think that
It's
for
this-
2 business days is I don't think a Vermonter is going to be aggrieved if it takes 2 business days to hear back from one of our staff. I'd love to give them that, even if we are shooting for 1 business day today.
I think that's a great point. I was just going to say on that, Sarah, would you mind scrolling back up a little bit? Yeah, on that language there, I think we're talking about complaints I think in that phrase, and you may want to just tighten that up a little bit, like if it's something within the permitting process, i.e. Time to respond to applicants, motion or whatever like that in terms of complaints, that might be kind of that caveat that would be outside of this. If it's something, all other kind of complaints that are not specific to a particular process within an application process, I think that's what's covered under A3, Romanet 3 there. But making that clear, I think would be a good idea.
So you're saying that there are specific processes that govern the permit process, and maybe take out the rest of this and speak about time to respond or something?
Yeah, I haven't thought about other pieces that might be covered within that language that you had highlighted there, rules, guidance, procedures, but certainly on the permitting side of things, like if there is a specific process for not necessarily complaining, but responding or whatever within that process that is, covered within that, those would not obviously go to the executive director in that instance, or necessarily go to enforcement. Wouldn't be appropriate for that.
All right, well, thank you all. I see Brooke has her hand up, but I want to be sensitive that I'm over on my time. And so what I'd love to do in terms of next steps, turn the language up. We're gonna have a training about our different buckets, about rules, guidance, procedures, and bring this back to the board in a cleaned up version after that, hopefully for consideration and maybe action. But any other last thoughts, Brooke?
I was just gonna ask a really quick question for Allison to think about. Is there anything we need to do for public records requests in this kind of policy for litigation exception? I don't need an answer now, but I don't know. I don't think it's going into that much detail here. We just mentioned that's one of our ways of communicating, but anyway.
So
Don't we have a separate public records request procedure that we would follow? Or maybe it's just statute, right?
so
We
up
follow
We do
here,
have a
we-
process, yeah.
Some practice, a process.
Okay, so maybe we
Looking at
can
updating.
make a reference to that, Sarah.
so I think what we do reference, and I can't find it right now, but we say that there is a specific public, we have, where is it, under methods maybe? Where we say that we have a specific, for public records, we have specific guidance
It's a little bit
that
farther down.
controls. Oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so maybe specifically link to them or something.
All right, well, thank you guys. This has been a lot to get through into different flavor of stuff than what we've been doing. But I want to make sure that we keep this moving forward so when we get more projects ready to stand up, that we have a way of getting out a lot of the good information that we're producing and can do that in a uniform way that can be expected by people and understood by people. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
So we don't have any legal matters to discuss, I don't think. Is that correct? Yeah,
That's
so
correct.
is there any, the public is gone, right? It's just us. So we could adjourn.
I'll move
Allison,
to
you
adjourn.
don't.
Wait a minute, who was first?
I'll second.
Okay, Brooke made a motion, Alex seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi,
All right, thanks, everyone. See you soon.
thanks.